Okay, here we go. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ria. I'm a compulsive overeater and bulimic. Grateful to be here. Grateful that you're all here. I say this every time. I'm only recording my voice. I will only record the part where I'm speaking. So there will be no video of your faces and no audio of your speaking. So your anonymity is protected. Okay, so today we're going to talk about step 4, which is going to be both conceptual and practical. We're not going to, a few people, someone texted me and was like, are we going to do a 4th step today? No, but I'm going to teach you how to do a 4th step. Because there is no way that you can do an entire 4th step in 1 hour by yourself. And we're going to talk about why. Okay. So we're going to go through the big book. I'm actually going to read the big book today, and we're going to use the instructions. And I'm also going to be taking / plagiarizing from the 12 steps and 12 traditions of AA, which elaborates on this a little bit more. So we're starting on page 64. Just very quickly, we'll do a quick review. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless, which basically means that not only are we, if we are alcoholics, we basically cannot stop when we want to, and stay stopped when we want to. So if you're in that situation, your body is broken and it cannot be fixed. You are a cucumber that is turned into a pickle. You cannot become a cucumber again. So if that's the case, there's nothing you can do to help yourself. Or I should say there's nothing I can do to help myself. And so there needs to be a power greater than myself that's going to help me through that. So we become convinced that a higher power, it doesn't matter what that higher power is, as long as it's not you. You start to develop a relationship with that higher power and turn your will and your life over to it, which basically means I'm firing myself as the director of the play of my life, and I am going to take direction from a higher authority. Okay, so in order to do that and revamp my life, I have to go back now and look at what isn't working and clear out what isn't working so that I can get to what is working. One example that I use is, let's say, for example, I don't know how many of you are in America. I know a bunch of you are in the UK. So let's say, for example, in America, we have a store called Target. I know you guys have Marks and Spencer or something like that. So let's say in Marks and Spencer, you have half the store devoted to regular Marks and Spencer merchandise, and then you have half the store devoted to typewriters. And somebody comes into the manager of the store and says, listen, dude, you're devoting prime store real estate to typewriters, which nobody buys except for Tom Hanks. So if you want to stay open as a store, you better clear out these typewriters and put in something else. And if the manager was smart, he'd go, oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, no, those aren't really working. They're not selling. We got to get them out of here. However, we are a different kind of manager where we go, yeah, but I really like typewriters. They're so pretty and they make that cute click, click noise when you press the buttons. And okay, that's nice. I'm glad you're attached to your typewriters, but you're going to go kaput. Your business is going to close down if you keep them on the shelves. So this is what they're basically saying to us here. If you keep the typewriters on the shelf, your business is going to go kaput. Said more succinctly, you either get spiritual and do the work or you're going to die. And we've talked about this a bunch of times, how they have these really not so subtle death threats littered throughout the book because they're not joking. And it's not just for alcoholics, it's for compulsive overeaters, anorexics, people with food issues as well. It will kill us. It may not kill us as glamorously or even as grotesquely as alcoholism could or drug addiction, but it will kill you slowly but surely. Okay, so let's go to page 64, shall we? Second paragraph. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. Facts are very different than ideas, right? A fact is a proven existing truth versus a concept or an idea or an opinion. Okay, we're looking at facts here. We're not looking at opinions. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsellable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values, right? You can't, if you have an electronics store and you devote half of it to typewriters, your business is going to shut down. Okay, we've established this. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly, right? We looked at the bedevilments on page 52 2 months ago. Like if you're in this program, your life wasn't going very well before, because if it was going fine, you wouldn't be here. Which means that if you want it to get better, you're going to need to do this. They're telling you, they've already explained to you your need to do this. And now they're telling you that if this, here's what you need to do if you want to get better. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup, which caused our failure. Being convinced that self manifested in various ways was what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. Resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. All right, so that's the first part of the 4th step, okay? So before we get to that, I just want to define the word resentment. Resentment means to re-feel something. There's a difference between the initial emotional reaction and a resentment. For example, I'll give you a great example, and I actually wrote a 10-step about it the other day, which I'll walk you through. But anyway, last week, my brother and sister-in-law planned a party for their new baby. And on Saturday night, last Saturday night at 11 o'clock at night, they dropped a not clear text in a group chat, which not everyone is a part of, telling everyone that it was canceled. They did not send direct text to everyone. And so I got my family up and out, and I have 4 kids at home, well, 3.5, I should say. One is in and out. I have 4 kids at home and a new dog. And I got everybody up and out, dressed up and out by 8 a.m., okay, to go to this party. We're about 20 minutes on our way to this party, which is an hour away, when my husband goes, oh crap, the party's canceled. So we then, and because it was rush hour, we spent an hour in the car, okay? Needless to say, and you can ask some of the people who I called that day, I was pissed. I was pissed because if any of you are parents, you know what it takes to get an entire family out the door by a certain time. And for me, traffic is one of my worst. It is one I hate. I'm using the word hate here, guys, like hate traffic. Okay. So I was really pissed off. Now, I am not at a spiritual level where I can say, oh, people make mistakes and like initially, maybe on a different day, maybe. But that day I was really annoyed because I felt like it was irresponsible of other people's time to tell people at 11 o'clock on a group chat in a really unclear way that your party was canceled. So not out of anger, but I felt because I listened to the anger, because anger gets a bad rap. Okay. Anger gets a bad rap. People are afraid of their anger because they don't know what to do with it. But actually, it's a very useful sign. It's a very useful tool that will tell us when something doesn't work for us. The problem is when we do nothing with that anger and it sits there, and then it turns into a resentment because we keep playing with it over and over and telling ourselves the story over and over. That's what a resentment is. It's when you hold on to anger, put it in your pocket, and fondle it like a little toy, okay? The initial anger is not necessarily a bad thing. So when the anger came up for me, I said, okay, something here isn't working for me. Either I have to change my attitude about the situation, or I can make a boundary here, which I did. And I texted my brother and sister-in-law, and I said, listen, I understand that you sent a message out at 11 o'clock last night. A personal message, especially to those traveling from long distances, would have been appreciated and appropriate. That's all I said. I didn't say I had to drive all this way and I didn't do any of that. I just made the boundary of it really would have been appropriate if you had done this and this. To which I got, I wasn't even out for a response from them. I didn't even care. I just knew that I had to say what I had to say. Now, a year ago, probably a little longer, but like a while back, I would have played a huge victim. I would have called everyone I knew and told them this horrible thing that happened this morning. And, can you believe that they did this and blah, 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 and been all righteous and martyry about it and turned it into a resentment. Instead, I said, no, this was not okay. This was not communicated about clearly. I was really, I felt this was not appropriate. I got the apology, which I didn't even need because I had already done the thing that I needed to do. Got the apology and I moved on. The end. So I want to just, that story is just to illustrate the difference between an anger and resentment. Okay, I dealt with the anger. If I had not dealt with the anger, it would have become a resentment. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. Does everybody understand what the difference between anger and resentment? Yeah, I'm getting nods. Okay, cool. Fine. All right, so in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. So this is the first step of a 4th step, okay? So I recommend if you have not written a 4th step, or even if you have, but you want to do it the way that I'm recommending, and by the way, my way is not the only way. It is just the way that I know and the way that I have experience with. And it's the way that I was taught by people who have worked the steps out of the big book, who were instructed by people who worked the steps out of the big book, and the original, who were taught by Bill in the original 100. Okay. So I'm just going through what I was taught. I know there are lots of other ways. I know there are workbooks. I've done the workbook. For me, my experience was workbooks and those kind of things are training for the Olympics. They're sort of like, you know, the little practice runs I take before I I dive in hard through the big book. Okay. So people. So I want you to buy yourself this. So I'm in Israel, right? So everything's backwards. So like, I want you to buy yourself, this is actually small, but I want you to buy yourself a big 5-subject spiral notebook. This is a little one. It's mini. I'm only using this because I'm in a maintenance situation right now. But I want you to get a big 5-subject notebook. I do not have one in front of me, but I think it's pretty clear what I'm talking about, right? They're big, 5 subjects, spiral binding, okay? Now, on the first page, you are going to write a list going back from as early as you can remember, which is why before every seating, whenever you write a 4th step, you're going to sit in meditation for 10 minutes beforehand and ask God to guide your pencil. Notice that I use the word pencil, okay? When you write a 4th step, please use a pencil. There is not a deep spiritual reason for this. The reason is if you make a mistake, you can erase it. That's literally it, okay? It's a lot easier to write a 4th step with a pencil than a pen. Now, you're going to sit with your meditation, 10 minutes, sit with your pencil, and then you're going to make your list, right? You're going to go back through your life from as early as you can remember. You're going to make a list of people against whom you were angry. Now, like I said, anger in the initial stage is not a big deal. If it was dealt with, if it was not dealt with and it's still in there in your memory, they need to go on your list. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about people who like you just didn't like, or, you know, just was somebody that kind of bugged you a little bit. I'm talking about people who you remember them and you're like, fuck them. You know what I mean? Like you do not, they are not people, you know, I remember I had people on my list, like people who bullied me when I was a kid. You know, if I met them today, and actually ended up meeting one of them years later, and I was uncomfortable around them, even though I had done the work around them, in their head, they didn't remember any of the stuff that they had done to me. So I was like, we are having a very different relationship right now, you know? But anyway, so you start with people, right? People are very clear. Go from as early as you can remember up to the present moment. You make a list of people against whom you were angry, against whom you had a resentment, okay? Institutions. Institutions are established groups or organizations, such as the police, the government, Brexit, let me think, the IRS, organizations or established governances, that the firemen, the police, like anything like that. Those are institutions, okay? Or like a university you attended, something like that. Now, principles. Principles is where people get stuck. And I remember saying to somebody years ago, I'm an old sponsor of mine, I said, I don't even know like what a principle is. And she's like, I know, because you don't have any. And she was totally right, because my only principle at the time was look out for numero uno. That was it. You know, get me what I want and get it for me now. A principle is a belief system or a concept. So for example, principles you might have a resentment against, sexism, racism, homophobia, judgmentality, hypocrisy. I always love when people say they resent hypocrites, because like we're the biggest hypocrites of the bunch. Okay. Like, it's like, oh my God, everybody else is so dishonest. It's like, honey, you're the one in a 12-step program who has to write a 4th step. So let's get serious. Okay. So yeah, that's your list. Okay. People, institutions, and principles. If you are still not clear on what an institution or a principle is, you are very lucky to live in 2023. Google what they mean. Okay. Now, once you have that list, you're going to ask yourself why each of these things make you angry. Okay. So we're going to go here. We asked ourselves why we were angry. Bottom paragraph, page 64. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore, we were burned up. On our grudge list, we said opposite each, name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations, which had been interfered with? So before we get into this example, I just want to talk about why are they bringing up these specific things, right? So in the 12 and 12, they basically talk about how all of our character defects and all of our all the problems we run into in our relationships are basically because we all have fundamental needs as humans, right? We have needs for security, we have shelter, food, clothing, society, companionship, sex, all of those things, right? We have a basic need for those things. It's part of what makes us human, and it's part of how we survive. We need them. They're not bad. The problem is when they go to an extreme and take over everything else is when we run into problems. So basically, our character defects and our imbalances in our relationships and our resentments are because of imbalances in those instincts. When we feel those instincts are threatened or those instincts get out of control, that's when we end up in trouble. So for example, if we look here, we were usually as definite as this example, right? I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. The cause, his attention to my wife, affects my sex relations, self-esteem, fear. So why would his sex relations and self-esteem be affected, right? It has nothing to do with him. It's that some guy likes his wife. Well, if your need for companionship and sex and security are so intense that somebody else coming in is going to make you feel threatened, that's how your instincts are out of whack. That's how it turns into a resentment. Okay. So let's keep going here. I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. The cause, told my wife of my mistress. What a freaking hypocrite, right? Like, you can't pay attention to my wife, but I can have an affair. Affects my sex relations, self-esteem, fear. The cause, Brown may get my job at the office. Affects my security, self-esteem, fear. So already you're seeing how these things are being affected, right? If somebody else gets my job at the office, I'm not going to make enough money. My security is going to be thrown off. I'm going to be homeless and everyone's going to die, right? Like that's how we play it out. So it's not about what other people are doing. It's about how it affects us and how we react to it. And by the way, this is a lot of people only get this far in the fourth step and they say, okay, I did it. Did my causes and effects. Did it. Did my fourth step. No, you did not. You started your fourth step. There is a whole other part that we're going to get to in a minute. Okay. Because right now we're busy pointing our finger at other people, but really we're going to be looking back at ourselves. Okay. Now, I'm resentful at Mrs. Jones. The cause, she's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. Affects my personal relationship, self-esteem, fear. I'm resentful at my employer. The cause, unreasonable, unjust, overbearing, threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. Affects my self-esteem, fear, security. I'm resentful at my wife. Misunderstands and nags. Likes Brown, wants house put in her name. Affects my pride, personal sex relations, security, and fear. Okay, so I'm going to show you very quickly how this looks in my notebook. You're not going to be able to read it because I have very tiny handwriting and also but here you go. The way I set it up is once I have my list of people, institutions, and principles, I break it up. So per page, I have one person, one resentment, and one effects. Then I go down to the second half of the page and I have another person, could be the same person, but a different resentment. It doesn't have to be just one resentment per person. One person, one resentment, one effects. Okay. Now, this should only be on the left-hand side of the page. This right-hand side of the page, we're going to get to in a minute. Do not write anything here. Do not write anything on the right-hand side of the page. The causes and effects should only be on the left-hand side of the pages. Okay. Pretend the right does not exist. I've said this 1,000 times. I've had too many sponsees who are like, wait, the left. I'm like, guys, this is not rocket science. Okay. Left side of the page only for causes and effects. Cause, effects, turn the page. Cause, effects, turn the page. Cause, effects. Okay. Do not write on the right-hand side of the page. Now, when you write your cause, here they happen to be a little bit more verbose. I was told that when you write your cause, it may only be limited to 8 words or less. Why? Because I don't want to hear your story. I don't want to hear the story. I don't want to know. There are so many ways to shade the cause to make it sound like you're the victim, or I don't want to hear the whole circumstance and she's a Pisces and I don't give a crap. Okay. I want to know what happened. Very simply, I had a sponsee recently, and she had a question about, well, if she said it in this way, and then she said this, and then she said it this way. I'm like, did she criticize you? Yes. On multiple occasions? Yes. So all you need to say is criticize me. The end. It's really not. It's just get to the point. Because not only because we can get so lost in our own tales of how the thing happened, but because this is a skill we need to dig down and get to what's really going on. And the faster we can do it, the faster we can get through it. And I don't just mean your fourth step. I mean, in the future, when these things come up and we feel hurt or threatened, what's going on? It's this, great, give it away. Let's move on. Okay, because really you're training your brain now to start recognizing these things. Okay, so I'll give you my example here, okay? So I'm resentful at my brother and sister-in-law. The cause, not telling us personally that the party was canceled, affects my ambitions, personal relations, self-esteem, fear. So let's be clear on what these things are, right? So self-esteem is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, right? I want to think that I'm a really good mom. I'm a nice person, which by the way, I'm not, in case you didn't know. I think I'm a good person, but I'm not a nice person because I don't value niceness. I value authenticity. This doesn't mean I'm mean to people, but I'm not here to be like, hi, how are you? I'm not, no, I don't have time for that. Okay. I don't need the story I'm telling myself about myself is that I'm, good, great, competent, perfect, infallible, all of these things. And when something comes up that makes me feel that story isn't true, I'm going to feel threatened by it. So that's what self-esteem is. Okay. Pride, in contrast, is the story I want other people to tell about. So I want other people to think that I'm infallible, great, smart, competent, blah, 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 blah. So when that is threatened, that's my pride being threatened. That is the difference. And that's why, by the way, next to self-esteem, we put down fear, because fear is directly linked to the story we're telling ourselves about ourselves and about our lives. Okay? If I have this story that I'm incompetent, that's going to affect, let's say, for example, my financial security, right? Because if I'm incapable of providing for myself, then I'm going to be afraid. And if somebody comes in, for example, into my office and starts doing things that make me look bad, I'm going to be afraid that I'm going to lose my job and they're going to take it and I'm not going to have enough money and I'm going to be homeless and everyone's going to die. See what I'm saying? Like that's the cycle that we go into. So that's the fear they're talking about, okay? Security, they're talking about either financial or emotional security. Financial security, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Emotional security, also pretty self-explanatory. It's really a sense of being emotionally safe, understood, heard, etc. Ambitions, the things you want to do or accomplish. Personal relationships, sex relations, also pretty clear, I think. Oh, my puppy just escaped. Anyways, and pocketbook also. Okay, so the difference between financial security and pocketbook is that financial security is more of a concept versus pocketbook, which is actual money. Okay. And then I think that that's everything, right? So whenever you put in self-esteem, always put fear in brackets next to it. So the options are pride, self-esteem, security, ambitions, personal and sex relations, and pocketbook. Okay. So every resentment may not apply. All of those effects may not apply, but that's your menu. Okay. That's what you have to pick from. Okay. Now, we went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, we considered it carefully, right? The first thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. Duh. If we hadn't known that, we wouldn't be here, okay? To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. And I'll tell you, that's as far as many people ever get in their fourth step. They do this and they're like, I did it. I'm spiritually evolved now. And I'm like, no, you don't. You just blamed other people. Like that's literally it. And we're professionals at that. So no, you're not even close to done. Okay. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse and then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. So that's really the essence of all of our resentments are essentially, it should be like this. It's not, I'm pissed off about it. And it's really just a question of our own expectations of how things should be. That's not to say that people aren't wrong. People do stuff that's messed up all the time. I see it on a regular basis. But the question is, am I going to take it and make it something that I'm going to fight with, or am I going to accept it? Is there something that I can do within this context to either make a boundary or respect myself, et cetera, and to do that in a mature and courteous way? If there is, great, go do that. If there isn't, if I'm still pissed off, That's my problem. And I'm going to, I have people who come to me. I've worked with a lot of sponsees. Unfortunately, I'd say the majority of my sponsees are victims of abuse of some kind. Now, I'm not here to tell you that it's your problem. That's not what I'm saying. You are not the cause of your own abuse. No, I would never say that to anyone ever, ever, ever. And I wish we lived in a world where abuse doesn't exist, but it does, unfortunately. That said, if the abuse happened 20 years ago and you are still mad about it, that is your problem. Not that the abuse happened, because it should, I say it shouldn't have happened. I'm not God, so I don't know what should or shouldn't happen. I wish it hadn't happened for you, but it happened. If you're still fighting against the truth that it happened, that is your problem. Do you see what I'm saying? There's a subtle difference here. Not that you weren't victimized, because you were. But if the role of victim is still serving you in some way, or if you are fighting against the fact that it happened, that is your problem. Because ultimately, the act of forgiveness is not saying that what happened was okay. I heard someone say once that forgiveness is giving up hope of having had a better past. In other words, stop fighting the fact that it happened, because it did. Stop fighting for fairness, because it wasn't fair. The past happened, and an injustice happened. You're not going to get your justice from the past. It's not going to happen. But so many of us sit for years in this demand for justice. Unjust things happen. When something happened to me many years ago, like 9, I don't know. And it was like the epitome of injustice. And I did everything right. I did all the right things. I did everything. I was honest. I was communicative. I did all the right things. And it was a really, truly terrible, horrible thing. And for about 3-4 years afterward, I was mad. I was really mad about it because it wasn't fair. It was really unjust. And then after I did some work, and I had to have a relapse, of course, it came to me like, when did anybody say that this world was a just place? When did anybody say that only fair things were going to happen? Like, I grew up on Disney movies. I thought the good guy always wins. That's not true. The good guy does not always win. Bad things happen to good people. That's nobody's fault. It's just what it is. That's not God's fault. It's just what it is. We live in a world that is imperfect, and where imperfect things happen. And if we're demanding of the world to be perfect and fair, we're going to end up with resentments, because it's not perfect and fair. And when we take those demands to God and say, why didn't you make it perfect and fair? God says, I never told you I made a world that was perfect and fair, guys. I never said that. I only told you I made a world that is good. And sometimes perfect injustice and unfairness are part of good, and you just don't understand why. And we demand to understand, because I deserve to know. Who said you deserve to know? Who said that? I said that. That's nice. It's really that simple. It sounds so cold and callous, but I promise you it's as simple as that. We just have these stories about how things are supposed to go. Who says anything's supposed to be like anything? I don't know. We just decided somewhere in there that it's supposed to be like this. It's not. Okay, here we go. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. Futility means lack of usefulness, okay? Notice that futility comes first. It's not unhappiness and futility. Unhappiness doesn't cause futility. Futility causes unhappiness, okay? I want to make that very clear here. We are not here to be happy. We are here to be useful. When we are useful, we are happy. We think that when we're happy, then we can be useful. No, when you are put to good use and you are doing things and you are helping other people, then you'll be happy. Okay. I want to just clarify that relationship there, because so many of us are like, I can't do this until I feel happy and whole. And I feel, no, you have to act your way into happiness. Okay. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? Worthwhile to who? Other people, not you. But with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We have found that it is fatal. For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. So in less than one half of that paragraph, they used 3 death words: grave, fatal, and die. They are telling you that resentments will kill you. Not just instantly, oh, I'm going to have diabetes and lose my feet and die. No, but once you cut yourself off from who you're supposed to be, it's instant spiritual death. And if you're cut off, eventually you're going to get into your own stories again, feel crappy about them, and say, well, I might as well eat. Or I'm so physically uncomfortable, I have no choice but to eat. This is the sequence of events, guys. So it starts here. We talked about how the problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind, right? So here's where the problems start, here. The food comes later. So if you're still stuck in stewing and resentment, it's grave, fatal, and you will die. Okay. If we are to live, right? If you don't want to die, if we are to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. So like I said, anger gets a bad rap. The initial anger response is not a bad thing if you listen to it and you don't feed it. But if you stay in the grouch and you stay in the brainstorm and you let yourself stew and stew and stew, that's dangerous. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. We turn back to the list, for it held the key to the future, right? So now we're going back and looking at what we wrote, but now we're going to look at it from an entirely different angle, because until now, we've only looked at it from that angle. What did you do? But now we're going to look at it from, what did I do? Because really, I'm the problem, right? We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. This prayer is not only for your 4th step, but also anytime anyone pisses you off. You can understand why it's my least favorite prayer in this book, okay? I hate praying for people who piss me off. I hate them, okay? I don't want to pray for them. They don't deserve it. But when I'm in a good when I'm in a good mood, or when I'm like, crap, I don't want to feel like crap the rest of the day, this is what you say, okay? If you're like me, it might take a few days, but this is the guidance here, okay? If someone pisses you off, instantly it's, well, they must be spiritually sick. How can I help them? Isn't that bullshit? Isn't that so unfair that we have to do that? Whatever. All right. Anyway, we avoid retaliation or argument, right? We are not here to be right. And we are not here to get justice, because justice is not up to us. We have no idea what's just and fair. So stop trying to retaliate and stop arguing with people, because you're not going to get anywhere. You're getting in the way of your own usefulness. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. I had a sponsor who used to say, if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. Like I think that was like Gandhi or Mother Teresa, or said something like that. Like, my mother had cancer 15 years ago, and she ended up dying. And if I had gone to her, if I, on the afternoons when I was helping her, if I would just be like, don't have cancer, it probably wouldn't have done much. Like, probably wouldn't have helped her very much. So it's the same thing. If people are being spiritually sick, if I say to someone, don't be an asshole, it's not going to change anything, because they're still going to be what they are. So I'm not interested in arguing with people anymore. Actually, I don't remember if I shared it with this group, but I recently saw this great meme with Keanu Reeves. It was fantastic. He basically was like, these days I avoid argument at all costs. Even if someone says to me 1 + 1 is 5, I'm like, you are absolutely correct. Have a wonderful day. And I'm like, oh my God, Keanu Reeves, you are my guru. Because it's true. Let people be wrong. Who cares? Go ahead. 1 + 1 is 5. Vaya con Dios. Enjoy. Enjoy your completely wrong equation. I don't care. What do I need to be right for? I know 1 + 1 is 2. We all secretly know I'm better than them anyway. So like, who cares? So the idea here is we do not have to be right. We do not have to get justice. We have to get ourselves and our conceptions out of the way so we can look at other people with kindness and tolerance. Okay. Referring to our list again. So we're going back now. Okay. Putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, We resolutely looked for our own mistakes. This is the fun part, guys. Where had we been? Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened. Okay? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. That means that they can be 99.9% wrong. You are looking at the 0.01% that is your responsibility. Okay? Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and we're willing to set these matters straight. Now, let's go back to our fourth step now, okay? So here we have, I'm a resentful act, cause, effects. Now over here, and if you want, you can be in touch with me after the meeting, and I will give you a list of all the questions to do on your right-hand side of the page. These are called the turnarounds, okay? Turnarounds are the questions you ask yourself about the resentment, okay? So the first section is the selfish section. The first question is, what did I want? Pretty straightforward. For example, with my brother and sister-in-law, I wanted them to tell me personally at a reasonable hour that the party wasn't happening so that I did not have to get in the car and drive my family. Now, I don't need to include all that. All I needed to say was communicate with me personally and appropriately. Done. The end. What did I need? So I needed, usually comes down to control, respect, love, justice, and security. Okay, so in this case, I needed control, respect, and justice. Now, here's the big question. What did they need? Okay, because I'm not thinking about what they needed. I'm thinking about what I needed. So they also needed respect, love, and security. These are two new parents with a baby who has been in the NICU because he has high bilirubin. Okay, so they're exhausted. They're not thinking about me. They're not thinking about, does Ria know that the party's not happening tomorrow? They're thinking, oh God, okay, I guess we have to cancel the party after we invited all these people. Okay, I have to think from their perspective. So it's, what did I want? What did they need? What did I need? And what did they need? And the needs come down to, I'm going to repeat it again so you can write it down. Love, respect, control, justice, security. You can be more specific with that if you want to, but it ends up being redundant because it usually just comes down to those things. Okay? And what did I want? Keep it as succinct as possible. Not only because we want to get to the cause, but because you want to get through your fourth step. Don't waste your time writing a 4-chapter book here. Okay? Now, dishonest. This is the next section. Okay, so you have your selfish section. Now you have dishonest section. What lies did I tell myself? I'm sorry, what lies did I tell others? What lies of omission did I tell? And what lies did I tell myself? Okay, those are the 3 dishonesty questions. I'm going to repeat them again. What lies did I tell others? What lies of omissions did I tell? And what lies did I tell myself? Okay, so in this case, for me, I did not lie to anyone. For what? No lies of admission, no lies of omission. I didn't omit any truth anywhere. Except if I want to be really, if I want to dig down and be honest, they put it in the family chat, which I left months ago because I was tired of listening to my in-laws blah, 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 and make all kinds of like stupid diet and fat jokes. If I had been a little more spiritually tolerant, I probably could have stayed in the group, and then I wouldn't have missed that message from them. But do we need to include that? Sure. Okay, we'll include that. Now, lies I tell myself. This is where it gets tricky because we are not used to asking ourselves that question, okay? So a lot of people are like, I don't know where I lied. I don't know. So in this case, I'm going to tell the lies I told myself in this case. I've never been flaky about time. I've never not given people a message that they needed. Is that true? Have I never once in my entire life flaked out on something? I flake out at least once a week on something, at least, okay? Have I never not communicated effectively? Ask my husband, okay? And they're inconveniencing me. That's the lie I'm telling myself. It's all about my time, right? That's the lie, that this is about me. They're doing this to me. It's nothing to do with me, but this is the lie that I'm telling myself. Okay. This is the story I'm telling myself. Remember, you want to get into that story. What's the story that I'm telling myself? What role have I cast myself in here? Okay. Next section, self-seeking. Self-seeking is basically whatever behaviors you engaged in to get what you wanted. Okay. Now, if you're not sure what you wanted, just go back up to the top of the page. What did I want? Right. So I wanted them to communicate effectively. So my self-seeking, what behaviors did I do? I played the judge, right? I judged them. I played the martyr because when we were in the car, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we're stuck in traffic. And I made a whole big drama out of it. I gossiped about them. I withdrew. I was very cold. But in a positive note, I did send them a clear text about what I thought. I did make a boundary text. But in my head, these are all the things that I did. I judged them. I was a martyr. I can't believe I had to get all my kids in the car, texted my other sister-in-law. Oh my God, you will not believe what happened. Guess what? We're stuck in the car right now. And when they rescheduled the party for 2 days later, I didn't go. I was not punishing them, by the way. I was just like, in my head, I was like, I went to your party already. Just because the party didn't happen doesn't mean that I didn't go. Also because it was like rescheduled for 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, absolutely not. Okay. So the self-seeking behaviors I engaged in to get what I wanted, which is directly related to that question up at the top. Now, fear. Fears, being inconvenienced, getting trapped, emotional pain, being glommed onto, but that's the other resentment that I have on this page that will be a different time. Okay. So I only have 2 minutes left, apparently, which is insane. So I'm gonna, oh, no, it's 10, it goes till 10:50, Lydia. Yeah, it goes till 10:50. It's 10, I have 10:44 right now. Okay, fine.
Lydia wasn't co-hosted, so I was
sorry.
taking the time. So till
Okay,
10:50. Okay.
10:50, yeah. Okay, fine. I'll make Lydia co-host right now. We're gonna do that right now. Hold on. Okay, Mazel Tov, you're a co-host. Okay, now we're going to get into fears, okay? Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. The short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. Man, I could do a whole hour on fear, but apparently I can only do 5 minutes, so we're going to go fast. It was an evil and corroding thread, right? We set the ball rolling. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper. This is on page 68, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. Okay, so your list of fears is going to be pretty clear to you after you write all your turnarounds because they're going to be right in front of your face. But you can also do another meditation list, do another meditation, and then write a list of things you're afraid of. Now, once again, I want you to consolidate as much as possible. So for example, if you're afraid of like bears, snakes, lions, whatever, wild animals, okay? Usually these things come down to death and pain, but you can make the list as long or short as you want, but for each one, you're going to break it down. So in this case, I'm going to do an example breakdown right now of a fear. Okay. So let's say my fear is, I don't know, financial insecurity, right? So I have financial insecurity. I just wrote down here. Okay. Financial insecurity. You see it backwards, double backwards because it's on Israeli paper. Okay. So financial insecurity. So now I have to dig down on that fear, right? So I'm afraid of financial insecurity because I'm afraid of homelessness, right? Since I'm a kid, I've been afraid of homelessness. If I'm homeless, I'm not going to get my needs met. So I'm going to starve, right? Needs not met. Starvation. And if I starve, what happens? I die. Now, most people stop there, but the truth is we're not afraid of death. We're afraid of what happens after death because we don't know, right? So I'm really afraid of the unknown. And if I'm afraid of the unknown, it's because I'm really afraid that God doesn't exist. Because if God doesn't exist, then who's in charge? Me. And we all know fundamentally deep down that I cannot do this myself. Self-reliance fails me. I am unable to run the world on a godlike level, right? So every time you're going to break down these fears, it's always at the end going to come down to self-reliance fails me. So it should look something like this. I'm going to bring it up close. Okay. Financial insecurity, homelessness, my needs not being met, starvation, death, fear of the unknown, God not existing, self-reliance fails me. Okay. I'm sorry. I know it's confusing when it's backwards, but I'm going really fast through this. but if you want it elaborated more, you're welcome to reach out to me one-on-one. But that's basically how you break down the fears. You write a list of them first, and then you turn them around like that, right? We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was as good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Perhaps there is a better way. We think so, for we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role he assigns. Just to the extent that we would do as he think he would have us and humbly rely on him, does he enable us to match calamity with serenity? Okay. And the next paragraph is the fear prayer, which you're going to say after every time you do a fear turnaround. Okay. We ask God to demonstrate ask God to remove our fear and ask him to demonstrate through us what he can do, direct our attention to what he would have us be. So we're going to do that here, and then we're going to do it every time we're afraid for the rest of our lives. Okay, now very, very, very quickly, the sex inventory. You're going to make a list of everyone with whom you have had a romantic relationship. It does not necessarily have to be sexual. Anyone with whom you have had a relationship that was more than platonic. And it can be any kind of dynamic. It can be an abuser. It can be someone of the same sex, opposite sex. It doesn't matter. Anyone with whom you've had a relationship that is more than platonic, okay? And then you're going to ask yourself the questions that are on page 69. By the way, that's not an accident. Those guys were pretty sassy, I have to say, the guys who wrote this book. Second paragraph, we reviewed our own conduct over the years past. You're going to answer these questions, right? Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Answer that question. Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? And what should we have done instead? You're going to answer those questions just like we did with the fear turnarounds. Then after that, it says we're going to try to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. We remembered that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. So in other words, you're going to do your turnarounds for all of the people with whom you've had a relationship, and then you're going to write an ideal for the kind of partner you want to be in your next relationship. Not, oh, I hope we take walks on the beach, and I hope he plays acoustic guitar for me, and we burn incense. No. I want you to talk about the kind of partner you want to be and the kind of relationship you want to build. Because a lot of the times thank you. Our relationships are not unsatisfactory because the other person isn't doing what they're supposed to do, but because we haven't been very good partners. Okay. And unfortunately, I have to stop, but I imagine that at least one of you has a question after that little whirlwind. So we're going to go from there. Thanks, guys.